I'll call the December 15th Study Commission to order. And I do have two members that are just running a little late. Mr. Thielen and Mr. Steppen are both on their way. And we have Ms. McCormick, who is excused tonight. Ms. Casey?
Here.
Ms. Dolan? Here. Mr. Dennehy?
Here.
Mr. Silk?
Here.
Ms. Shaw? Okay, thank you. Can we have our Pledge of Allegiance and prayer?
Amen.
All right, thank you. Public comment on any item on the agenda.
Can you hear me? Cool. Perfect. Thank you. For a second here. So this is a response from Local 96. I'm currently the president of IFF Local 96 from last week's meeting, and item number 9, Roman numeral 1 on the agenda. John Leibel, Floral Boulevard, 3200 Floral Boulevard. To whom it may concern, we are writing you today to address our concerns with recent meetings held by the Butte-Silver Charter Review Committee, including the removal of Director of Fire Services from charter language and the addition of Fire Coordinator. It is our understanding that the replacement of the Director of Fire Services with a Fire Coordinator was suggested to bring forward to a vote of the citizens of Butte-Silver in 2026. The 1996 BSB Study Commission proposed, and the citizens adopted the exact opposite. They voted to remove the Fire Coordinator because of the redundancy within the position. We would first like to ask you, where is the money going to come from to pay for the new position? As it stands now, the fire budget is virtually capped out. IFF Local 96 has been pursuing an increase for our staffing model to include 1 extra firefighter per shift, bringing just 1 truck in the community to the safety standards, and have been unsuccessful. The fire department has been pursuing staffing for our Fire Inspections and Investigation Bureau, also to no avail. Currently, Fire Marshal Lee runs that program by himself. The reason being, we have no money. Butte-Silver recently paid for a study of the fire department here in Butte-Silver by Emergency Services Consulting International, ESCI, which recommended we have at least 3 individuals in that office by this point in time. Are you suggesting a tax increase for the citizens? If so, have you investigated what that would cost? As it is a position of oversight over the Director of Fire Services or the Chief, we would imagine that the position would be paid a substantial amount more than any of the department directors in the county. This leads to our next question. What is the reimplementation of a coordinator looking to solve? Currently, the issue is that Local 96 and or the volunteers do not always agree with the decisions made by the Director of Fire Services. How will this new position help with that? Why are no other department heads under question? We feel this is a proposed charter change that would only address a personality conflict and not solve any substantial issues. Excuse me. There is currently an Assistant Chief of Training position in the ordinance. Butte-Silver has refused to fill this position for more than 20 years. A training chief would bring more cohesiveness between the paid and the volunteer members by setting a standard and training all firefighters to that standard. This solution of filling the training chief position would still take additional funds, but would require less language changes within the charter. Have you guys looked into that option? IFF Local 96 urges the BSB Study Commission to utilize the language and positions already in the charter before going backwards. BSB citizens have already decided this issue on the 1996 ballot. Let's follow the will of the voters and improve on the language and the model they have already adopted. Please let BSB govern its own fire services. Also, we do understand that you guys have a preliminary vote on this coming up, and we look forward to being part of any of that conversation. I will be available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Leibel. Other public comment on items on the agenda?
R. Edward Vanderub, 2601 Grand Avenue, Butte, for and on behalf of the REB. Public comment on any item on the agenda. Item 8, unfinished business. Neighborhood councils, notice the S. Working group update. The common concern and focus of the neighborhood community improvement groups is neighborhood improvement. They are not government entities. The terms council, board, and commission give the connotation that they are government entities. Therefore, neighborhood community improvement groups should not be called councils. In that the common concern and focus of a Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council, please note the deletion of the S, is to provide the Butte-Silver Bow Council of Commissioners with consensual advisory recommendations. It is a government entity, therefore it should be called a council. I would like to request that you all take your smartphones and Google what is governmental harmony. Then read the Google AI overview of government harmony means. And Google the Greeley Area Plan, Butte, Montana, 2010. Then go to page 23 and read the Butte-Silver Bow City County Government's planning strategy for citizen involvement and access to government. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment on items on the agenda? Okay. A public comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the study commission?
Most certainly. All right, Vanderub, 2601 Grand Avenue, Butte, Montana. For and on behalf of the REB. Public comment on anything not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the study commission. Further to public participation in the decision-making process of our Butte-Silver Bow local government. I want to thank your chair for using the two words listening session and clarifying that you will be doing both listening sessions by topic and final public hearings by proposal before making final decisions. I had not heard those two words before, listening session, used, nor that intended procedure expressed previously at any of your meetings that I have attended. Nor do I find those two words or that procedure posted on your website. The usage of those two words and the procedure they represent may be insignificant to some, but are highly significant and important to a representative democracy. I must, however, respectfully disagree with your chair that this commission has not made any significant decisions. Deciding whether or not to create a working group to develop a recommendation relative to a specific issue, to me, is a highly significant and important decision. I would like to commend you for all the fact-finding efforts that you have done. I would also like to clarify that my comments are not meant to be criticisms about what you have done. I agree you have done more than due diligence to this point. For the most part, my comments, which seem to be misinterpreted, are meant to focus on trying to point out what still needs to be done. Thank you for posting the survey, Shannon, and open house comments. Unfortunately, after a lot of looking, I finally found the individual comments. They are way down at the bottom of a very, very long web page, instead of being divided into subpages by topic. There's one more point that needs clarifying. I did not respond to Commissioner Thielen's comment, "If you don't like it, stay home," at your last meeting, because it was the public comment period on anything not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of this study commission, and not a discussion time. But that comment needs to be dealt with for the good of this community, of this commission, and this community. I had basically the same situation with the Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners about 14 years ago, when I started attending their meetings. Being listened to, but not heard, nor responded to, and being ignored before and after the meetings in the hopes that I would go away. So I will tell this body the same thing I told the Council of Commissioners. I have a right to be here, doing what I'm doing. I'm not talking about dogs and potholes. I'm talking about issues that are within your jurisdiction. So get over it. I'm not going away. That is, at least not until they put my ashes in that box in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banderal. Any other public comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the study commission? All right, moving on, I'd like to have approval of the minutes of the meeting held December 1st, 2025. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The minutes look great, and I would just at this point move that we approve the minutes of the meeting of December 1st, 2025.
Is there a second?
And second.
Thank you. It's moved by Shaw and seconded by Mr. Steppen. Is there any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. None opposed, so motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to correspondence and our study commission update. We did receive an email from Mr. Mr. Shane Worley, sorry. I was wondering if that sugar is going to make this be that kind of a night, and indeed, here we are. So Mr. Shane Worley had sent us an email following our last meeting to clarify the procedures that Butte-Silver Bow Fire Department currently uses in 2025. And so, Ms. Casey, you had a comment regarding that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did. Mr. Worley responded to some of the public comment that was made by Mr. Olson. And one of the things that came up was that the fire department was unable to find a house due to its location, and he felt that the volunteers might have known where that house was better. He also stated that that was before cell phones. So I just wanted to let this body know, and also any members of the public that are listening, that Butte-Silver Bow has made great lengths in fixing those types of problems. In 1999, they adopted an ordinance that was called the addressing location. So every house that is built has an address. Every road is named. There's you can't name a road that's with the same name or similar names. So they've gone to great lengths to fix that. That addressing database all goes into a mapping system that is used by not only the fire department, but all of the emergency personnel, and I believe also the ambulance. So while it may not still be perfect, there's been great strides made in addressing how to locate these properties. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. And Ms. Adams will make sure that email is forwarded and included in tonight's notes. Moving on to our unfinished business, we do have a presentation. Excuse me, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. 1999, that was a long time ago, but I'm guessing, and I just wanted verification, either Mr. Silk or Lori could probably answer this. The mapping system, and that's great to know, so thank you for that information about the location and tracking those homes and streets. Is that looked at every year to make sure everything's copacetic and adding in new homes and new streets and things like that?
Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cindy, yes, it is every time that somebody is building, even if it's on a private road, it needs to be named, and then the address or the home's driveway is actually GPSed out in the rural section for the mapping. All of that is handled through the planning department and their GIS. Then the GIS maintains that database, and then they do their magic with the software and updates for the emergency personnel. So it started in 1999, it continues, it's been updated, I'm sure it's been improved, but yes, all new homes, commercial buildings, anything that is built, subdivisions, they all have to go through the planning department, the roads have to be named, and they have to have addresses, and they also have to, the rural addresses have reflective addresses, I believe they're red and white, that are, Butte-Silver Bow does those for those homes for them to put out.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Worley, for that email, because that's good information. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just a point of reference also, we did an update on the emergency system and the dispatch system about 5 years ago. We received a grant from the state of Montana, and we have redone the entire DES 911 system and mapping system for both the first responders and ambulance and those people who are involved in emergency management. So just, yeah, thank you.
Ms. Shaw?
Just to add a little detail too, I can't remember what year it was, but there was an outfit that came out and actually painted addresses on the sidewalks. I mean, so you could, some of us, you know, you can't see the number on the house maybe, but I forget who did that, but I believe that was also in the whole purpose was to identify an address.
Thank you for putting pause on there, Ms. Dolan. I didn't realize there was more questions, so thank you for directing me. So moving on to our unfinished business. So tonight, with the first two bullet items, city, county manager, and the number of commissioners, We will have some action tonight. We will be voting after our deliberations about including this as a recommendation in our preliminary report, including if these would be possible ballot initiatives. And I want to walk through the process because it's good for the public and it's good for us to remember. So tonight, after our presentation on these two, we'll deliberate that presentation and the things that we wish to consider, things that we might need to circle back around. And then after we publish our preliminary report at the end of January, that's when our listening sessions will recommence and we'll have another public hearing, formal public hearing. After the formal public hearing is when we will take our final vote on recommending initiatives for the ballot, at which time we push that out to the voters for the general election or the November election for them to vote on those issues. So our recommendations are about it goes to the ballot or not. Deliberations tonight are about the report itself, getting into the report. And if, so it's preliminary. I want to make sure that we keep saying the words preliminary, that we have multiple steps before there's a final decision regarding ballot initiatives. Is there any questions on the process? Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you also explain to the public who are watching tonight or will watch this stream to again reiterate the ballot issue bucket and then the other bucket of recommendations so they know our full picture and context of the different things we're deliberating?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are items that we might have that just go into a recommendation bucket for our Council of Commissioners to consider in terms of change of practice, or maybe they want to add or change directorship versus managerships, that sort of thing. They might not be things that are necessary to go to ballot, but might be procedural. Some examples might be procedures that regarding public participation in the council process itself. They might be recommendations that we make that are coming out of Fire Council or the Fire Advisory Group. So there's the two buckets. One is for the voters to vote on, and then there's the recommendations that we'd give to council, and it will be up to them to take or leave those recommendations. Does that answer it for you?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I will say, just as a point, that so folks know that the ballot initiatives, if they are passed, they are binding. And Butte-Silver local government has to implement those changes via the vote of the people. Meantime, the recommendation bucket to the Council of Commissioners, thanks to the county attorney who has said he will bring those forth to the council for deliberation, but those are non-binding. So that means they can look at them and say yes or no, and depend on the discretion of the council. Thank you.
I appreciate that follow-up as well. Just using some words that I heard from our executive director of the Montana Association of Counties at an event this last Friday, it is about the consent of the governed, that we have good government. So we are asking for their consent by them voting in or out the things that we are putting forward. So thank you for that clarification. Tonight, folks, fellow commissioners, as we listen to the presentation and then when we want to ask questions, I would like to entertain allowing public comment after we have that presentation. And so we can have an opportunity for questions if there are some. If we are in agreement with that, I would move forward with that procedure. I don't think I need a vote. I just need a head nod from you all, if that's okay. Okay. And we have one dissent, so we'll just roll. Just kidding, he says. In the other piece that I would like to remind us of is to please acknowledge the chair before we speak, and then let's stay on track and on topic. And I would appreciate if we didn't have crosstalk on the dais, please. So direct questions through to me, and then we'll respond to each other. Okay. All right. So I think you are up, Mr. Dennehy, with the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to point out the working group for the Council of Commissioners, Mayor, and City County Manager, it was Lori, myself, and Mary. And for the Neighborhood Working Group, it was Mary, myself, and Chad. So what I tried to do is kind of, we looked at the charter, we made our own sections, or we're responsible for our own sections of that charter. And I'm bringing it forward tonight. And Lori, please help me if I stumble over your council commissioner and city manager area, or council commissioners area. Just jump in if you would, please. If I could, would you allow me to go through my entire process first, and then we can back up and ask questions from there? Because early in the discussion, there are some things that probably will answer some of the early questions in the latter discussion. So if you would give me that leeway, then we would move forward, and then we'll try to answer any questions that we might have. Is that okay?
That's appropriate.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. This is called Recommendations from the Council Commissioner, Mayor, City County Manager, and Neighborhood Council Working Group. The next one, please. We started on Article 3, which is the legislative powers, Section 3, powers and structure. We suggested and recommended that the composition of the council commissioners will be 4 council commissioner members. At least 2 shall be elected every 2 years. The qualifications for those council commissioner members didn't change. The election of the 4-member elected will be elected by districts, as our recommendations. Terms have not changed. The vacancy requirements have not changed. The forfeiture of office has not changed, and the removal of office has not changed. So they are in your charter as it is now. Continued, they would be full-time positions, and they would be paid positions. Powers of the duty and duties of the council commissioner. This is a new section. This has to deal with neighborhood councils or groups or whatever the vernacular will be once we decide on that. And it says the council commissioner shall establish by ordinance policies and procedures. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Another next one too, please. Thank you. Sorry, James.
Dan, I would just interrupt you too, and you do have copies of these sections, hard copies printed out that Shanna handed out.
Are we good? Thank you. This new section, powers and duties of the council commissioners, section E, and that's a placeholder. Matt will help us with the section. Council commissioners shall establish by ordinance policies and procedures for the formation of neighborhood councils and include specific requirements for neighborhood councils set by ordinance. Section 3.06 is the mayor section. This is an entirely new section since we don't have mayor in the charter right now. Powers and duties. The mayor shall be elected at large. The mayor shall be presiding officer of the Council of Commissioners and shall vote on all issues. The mayor shall be recognized as the head of the city-county government for all ceremonial purposes and by the governor for purposes of military law, and shall exercise contracts, deeds, and other documents. The mayor shall have no administrative services. Next, James, please. Next again, please. I didn't know how to format it, so I just left it blank. 3.07, please. One back, please. Okay, Deputy Mayor, thank you. This is 3.07, Deputy Mayor. This is a new section. The Council Commissioner shall elect at its first meeting following the general election from the Council Commissioner membership a Deputy Mayor, who shall act as mayor during the absence or disability of a mayor. Section 3.08, election. Elections shall be nonpartisan elections, as they are now. Section 3.09, prohibitions, appointments, and removals. Neither the Council of Commissioners, its members, nor the mayor shall in any manner dictate the appointment or removal of any city, county administrative officers or employees whom the city, county manager or any of his or her subordinates are empowered to appoint. Section 3.10, interference and administration. Next, please. Except for the inquiries and investigations, the council commissioners, its members, and the mayor shall deal with the city county officers and employees who are subject to the direction and supervision of the city county manager solely through the city county manager. Neither the council commissioners, its members, nor the mayor shall give orders to any city county officer or employee, either publicly or privately. Section, one back, please, James. Thank you. Section 3.11, vacancies, forfeiture of the office, filling of vacancies. Vacancies. The office of council commissioners or mayor shall become vacant upon his or her death, resignation, removal from office, or in any manner authorized by law. Next section, forfeiture of office. Council commissioner or mayor shall forfeit his or her office if he or she, one, lacks at any time during his or her term of office any qualifications for the office prescribed by this charter, for the error in spelling, or law. Number 2, or violates any express prohibition of the charter. And 3, or is convicted of any felony. Next section, please. Continue. Filling a vacancy in the office of mayor. If a vacancy in the office of mayor, the deputy mayor shall become the mayor upon the remainder of the unexpired term of mayor. Upon assuming the office of mayor, the deputy mayor vacates his or her council commissioner position. Section 3.11, procedures. The council commissioner shall establish by ordinance its rules of procedures, any time and place of meetings. Section 3.12, compensation. The council commissioner positions, including the mayor, shall be paid full-time positions. The council commissioner shall establish by ordinance the compensation of its members, including the mayor. Next, moving into a new article, city county manager. Section 4.01, appointment, qualifications, and compensation. Council of Commissioners, by a majority vote of its total membership, shall appoint a city county manager for an indefinite term and fix the manager's compensation. The city county manager shall be appointed solely on the basis of education and experience in the acceptance, competencies, and practice of local government management. The manager need not to be a resident of the city county or state at the time of appointment, but must maintain residency within the city county during the entire term. Next, please.
Dan?
Yes.
We did change that based on some comments from the county attorney. That section, the county attorney was kind of worried about the qualifications, so we did change that. It is correct on your clean copy that it is A is the Council of Commissioners by a majority vote of its total membership shall appoint a city county manager for an indefinite term and fix the manager's compensation. The Council of Commissioners shall work with the Human Resources Department to determine qualifications and write the job description for the recruitment of a city county manager.
Thank you, Lori.
So we did update that.
Next, please. Continue. Removal. Do we have one back, please? One forward, please. I'm sorry, James. I'm on Article 4, City County Manager. Nope, back. One more, there, thank you. One more forward, thank you. Continue. Removal. The Council of Commissioners may remove the City County Manager with or without cause by the majority vote of the full council, or if the city county manager declines to resign at the request of the council of commissioners, the council of commissioners may suspend the manager by a resolution approved by the majority of the total membership of the commissioners. Such resolution shall set forth the reason for suspension and proposed removal. A copy of such resolution shall be served immediately upon the manager. The manager shall have 15 days in which to reply thereto in writing, and upon request shall be afforded a public hearing, which shall occur not earlier than 10 days, nor later than 15 days after such hearing. Next, please. Is requested, sorry. Didn't put it all in. That's perfect. After the public hearing, if one is requested and after full consideration, the council may, by majority vote, by its total membership, may adopt a final resolution of removal. The manager shall continue to receive full salary until the effective date of final resolution. Acting city county manager. By letter filed by the mayor, city county manager shall designate, subject to the approval of the council commissioners, qualified city county manager to exercise the powers and perform the duties of the manager during his or her temporary absence or disability. During such absence or disability, the council commissioner may revoke such designation at any time and appoint another officer of Butte-Silver City County government to serve until the manager shall return from his or her disability ceases. Next, please. We're now moving into powers and duties of the city county manager. The city county manager shall be the chief administrative officer of the city county and shall be responsible to the council commissioners for the administration of all county affairs required by this charter, law, ordinance, or resolution. Powers and duties of the city county manager are the same as the formal chief executive language throughout the charter. So if there's chief executive, that can be struck out and the city county manager shall be inserted. Next, please. The final work group, neighborhood councils. The council commissioners shall establish by ordinance policies and procedures for the formation of neighborhood council and include specific requirements for neighborhood councils set by ordinance. That, ladies and gentlemen, are our recommendation to the full commission, and we will take any questions that you have and have this, as Ray Lynn said, to vote on what shall be looked at in the preliminary report. Go ahead, Laura.
Also, in section of the city county manager, in section 4.01, in subsection B, where we have the or, we would like to know what the pleasure, to the point that we are going to move this forward, whether you would want the council commissioner to basically be able to just remove the city manager, or if you want them to go through and have to, by resolution, put in their reasons and give the city county manager an opportunity to have a hearing. So we do need to make a decision on that. It's either the first language or the second language,
Right,
but
correct.
not both in there.
Right, correct, thank you.
Questions at this time for the group? Mr. Steppen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is great work. I have a question, and maybe it's a simple one, but the mayor, are they considered under this proposal part of the executive or legislative branches?
I would believe it's legislative.
Thank you.
I would just add that I believe by law they have to be on the legislative side. I believe that's what we went through with the state law.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. That's exactly where I think it belongs. And so the mayor also would be the tiebreaker. This is a big issue, knowing how that worked with council commissioners. I didn't see, did I miss something in your language about how that would work? Or
Madam Chair. Cindy, I think what it is that the mayor will be a full voting member of the council and shall vote on any issue, not a tiebreaker.
Okay. I'm not sure, Madam Chair, sorry. County Attorney and Ruth, I just wonder, I think it seems problematic if there's a tie. We usually have to break the tie somehow. We don't usually have a, yeah.
There's 5.
Chairman Brandel, Commissioner Shaw, there's 5 members.
Yeah, I,
So you
excuse
have
me.
4
Sure.
plus the measure of 5, so you have an odd number, so you don't need the tiebreaker anymore.
Madam Chair, except when somebody doesn't come to work, they don't come to the council meeting, and many times it ends up with an even number. It just happens. So I'm thinking that we need to make sure that we cover all bases in case there is a tie.
Ms. Casey?
Madam Chair, and perhaps a county attorney could answer this, but if there's a tie, does the vote not pass?
Chairman Brandel, Commissioner Casey, it depends on the type of meeting. So currently, right now, if, such as last week, if it's a committee of the whole meeting, it kept tying and they had to keep going back to deliberations until it passed. There was no tiebreaker in that meeting when you read our current ordinances, charter, our current charter and resolutions. And then so when it goes back to, a regular committee meeting, that's where we have Chief Executive Gallagher as the tiebreaker. So again, it's gonna work depending on what meeting that they're in and where they're working. So I read this as we had 5. Well, since we have 5, you don't need one. And I guess that's where we would also have to look at rewriting the rules on what constitutes a quorum and what constitutes, having a full council for the ability to vote on something. Because then at that point in time, if you've only got 4, you can say you don't have a full council and we can't vote on it. When we have, I would think, just theoretically speaking and common sense speaking, when we're down to that few people, they should be showing up for their jobs when they're, voting. I mean, obviously people are going to be on vacation sometimes, but I think it's going to be less of an issue than you would have right now with the 12. But it's also, I don't disagree with Michelle. I think that we might want to contemplate putting in some kind of a tie-breaking vote or who the tiebreaker may be.
I'll take Ms. Dolan, then I'll take you, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, County Attorney Enruth, I think that's right. I think a good robust legislative discussion and keep deliberating until you come up with a solution or come up with, not a tie. You come up with a definitive thing. And I would also mention too that if we're going from part-time to full-time, then we're not going to have obviously people are not going to be there every week. There's things that come up, but for all intents and purposes, these are now full-time commissioners who don't have to worry about a full-time job and getting to council and doing those kinds of things. So that's just another thing to think about.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and that's Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, that is absolutely right. So the committee of the whole meeting is, I always call it the working meeting. That we don't make decisions until it goes to the full regular meeting the next week. And that, like a county attorney just said, the committee of the whole meetings, you can have a tie and it just, you try to maybe wrangle around. And like I guess last week, John Morgan had to do it 3 times to finally, they just held it in abeyance. But then when it goes to the regular meeting, that's the action meetings. That's when all the action happens. It's really important that you have some way to break a tie. And I think that's the reason they're different for committee of the whole, which is a working meeting without really making decisions. And then that's always moved to the regular meeting. So just to clarify that that's really important to have some way of breaking a tie. Thanks.
Mr. Enruth, if we were to reconfigure this council, would they then also go back and redo ordinance in regards to their bylaws and operations and procedures?
Yes, they would have to, because Chairwoman Randall, I believe that is correct, because the current resolutions and all the bylaws deal with 12 commission members. They deal with the chief executive. Those would have to be rewritten, just generally speaking, to be formatted to the new style of government that is in place, which then also, we would update those rules that haven't been updated in a very long time. The thought of a tiebreaker, though, I still think it's important for everybody to think about. I do agree. If they only have 4 for the one meeting, who is the tiebreaker, though? Where does it come in is my next question. Because right now, if Chief Executive Gallagher is gone, it goes to the chair and then to the vice chair. And so they have the ability to break those ties. So currently, if this council, puts forth a 4 council of commissioner council, and then the mayor has a deciding vote, but you only get 4 members without that line of succession in place, I could see some issues coming up. So I do think it needs to be thought about and possibly put in.
So I want to reason out our kind of question here. So we would have a quorum with 4 seated members. And then if we were to determine that the mayor is the tiebreaker vote or the deputy mayor, does that person not in a way get 2 votes?
That's what I'm saying. Excuse me, Commissioner Brendel. That was my issue with it is you don't have someone to designate for a tie based off of what's being presented. If the mayor in and of themselves always has a vote, then there's no tiebreaker. To where I've read some of these, and I believe Commissioner Denny can probably comment on it some more. I do believe some of them had the mayor as the tie-breaking vote rather than a full-time voting individual. So that's a possibility with keeping the 5 in place. Something like that. It's just based off of the things that we've had happen in council recently. I do believe having some type of succession plan in place for tie-breaking votes is important.
I'll take Mr. Dennehy, and then I'll take you, Ms. Dolan.
Madam Chair, that's exactly right, County Attorney Matt Enruth. County Attorney Matt Enruth. It takes me a little time to, sorry. So we had 5, it's a 5-member council. 4 of it are elected by district, 1 at large, and it's all 5 of them vote on every issue. And other communities have the mayor not voting on every issue and only voting in tiebreakers. So our deliberations was, well, if that mayor is elected by the entire community at large, that person should have the ability to vote on every issue. And there's 5 of them. So if it is a 2-2 split, the mayor, or 3-2, it's going to be a 3-2 vote on any issues. That's how we thought about it. But again, none of this is written in stone and it can be changed, but that's how kind of what our deliberations were.
Ms. Dolan, and then I'll take you, Mr. Steppen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dan. That was a good explanation of that. And I would say to think about a tie-breaking vote, if the mayor, if it were to come to pass and we have this new form, that because the mayor is voted on by all of Butte-Silver Bow, I would think that would elevate them to a tie-breaking vote because they're not just elected by a certain district of Butte-Silver Bow County, they're elected by everyone writ large, so that might be something to take into consideration. I think that might be appropriate to keep that continuity of having a tie-break vote, even though the mayor is now in the legislative branch. Thanks.
Mr. Steppen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to point out that under section 3.11, that if there's a vacancy in the office of mayor, the deputy mayor becomes the mayor, vacates their seat, and then you have 4. So you wouldn't have a majority or a delineated tiebreaker in your voting procedures. But I also agree with if the mayor is designated as a tiebreaker, then the only time, I'm trying to think of how to articulate this in my brain, the only time he would vote would be in the manner of which the mayor wanted. And you kind of get your 3-2 when you need it at that point, if that makes any kind of sense at all.
Mr. Enruth.
Chairman Randall, Commissioner Steppen, but when that commissioner steps down, their seat will be filled through the vacancy process. So you have that corresponding, same with President of the United States. We go VP, we go Speaker of the House, and so on. It would work the same here. You would have your commissioner step into the duty of the mayor role at that point in time, and then their seat would be filled through the normal process of filling a vacancy on the commission until the next general election is held. So there could theoretically be a time frame, that 60-day period that's there by statute in which you don't have a full commission, but it should be filled by then, just so everybody's aware.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Matt Steppen's remark, it's absolutely the same thing that's going on right now at the Council of Commissioners. The only time the chief executive votes is to break a tie. And I'm really glad that we're taking that element out of the executive branch. I've always thought there was a little bit of a kind of a question mark. I'm just saying, you know, having the executive side break a tie on something that's from the legislative side. So, but that's exactly how it works now, and it would be a similar thing if we had a mayor that's on the legislative side break a tie. Thank you.
Oh, yep. Ms. Casey?
I believe the county attorney addressed this, but I just want to clarify. Without putting a tiebreaker in the charter, they could do something when they develop their rules, such as they have to have defining their quorum or how that's going to work. Could that happen within the council developing their own rules of how they would handle tiebreakers?
Chairwoman Brandel, Commissioner Casey, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it's in our charter. It's in the rules, the tiebreaker vote. I just can't remember correctly, if anybody can correct me off the top of my head.
I thought that in the powers of the chief executive, we had tiebreaker. It's not in there?
Yes, and it might be there, yes.
Mr. Denny, he's shaking his head no.
While I'm looking this up, I do believe it is also correct, Commissioner Casey, that they could put it in there, and that's, I have the rules right here. It is in there, but let me look really quick to see if this is, it's in the charter itself.
Mr. County Attorney Ann Ruth, it's in section 3.05, Council of Commissioners Procedure and Public Participation. It said the presiding officer for all regular and special meetings of the council shall be the chief executive who shall decide all tie votes of the Council of Commissioners.
Say, yeah. If he's the presiding officer, he's the tiebreaker. So yes, so I would highly recommend them putting it in the charter itself, but yes, they can also put it in their rules. But the charter being the governing document and breaking it down into a smaller amount of people, I think it would be, so what I'm looking for, I think it would be beneficial to have it in the charter. So it's not constantly changed.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Just quickly, if you continue on that same line, it says, if the chief executive cannot preside, the council commissioner shall designate a presiding officer from among their own number. So that kind of follows through with what we, you know, we won't have the chief executive doing that. It just says that that's the next step, like Plan B. If the chief's not there, then the council of commissioners would select a presiding member of their number to break the tie. So
Ms. Shaw, would that not be the deputy mayor in this instance?
I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Steppen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does that mean that someone within their commission ranks? So effectively, they would have a second vote?
Chairman Brandel, Commissioner Steppen, no. So what happens is you know, such as right now, if Chief Executive Gallagher is not at the meeting, Commissioner Morgan would step in. He no longer has a vote at that time. He only has a tie-breaking vote, such as here a couple of weeks ago, both Chief Executive Gallagher and Commissioner Morgan were gone, and Commissioner Thatcher at that point in time was the tie-breaking vote. So it runs in that line of succession, yes. So per the rules and based off of what Commissioner Schott has said, when you read the actual rules that currently govern our council of committee members, that is in here, that the next presiding people are how they break those votes, or break those tie votes, which again could be, you know, put into the council rules if it is revamped to where the deputy mayor if the mayor is not presiding, steps into that spot, they don't get 2 votes, they get the 1. They get the tie-breaking vote.
Mr. Silk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just, I guess, curious from the commissioners that have been on the Butte-Silver Study Commission, or Council of Commissioners, how frequent does that happen? And if it is an issue that is so, there does need to be a tie-breaking vote, if that issue is so important, why can't it just wait until there's a full council to have all important topics voted on by the people that were elected? They can still have deliberation, they can have a vote. If it goes to a tie, they still can deliberate, but at what point can you just throw up your arms and say, okay, we need to rethink this until the next meeting, and then maybe you'll have a full quorum?
Mr. Enworth.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Silk, I think I can answer that the best based off of my experience with the council right now. Ties don't happen very often. I think that's based on the amount of county commissioners that we currently have. However, by shrinking that amount, I think you are going to get ties a lot more often. With that being said, the ability to break a tie is important because a lot of what the council votes on is time sensitive. We have lots of grant funding and things like that get put on the agenda in an emergency situation because they have to get paperwork in quickly, and they just simply didn't find the grant until the week or 2 weeks before that meeting. So having that ability, I think, is very important for the council to be able to function and act on emergency situations. Now, when they are not emergency situations, they can continue to move them down the road. That's what happened last week. Was they kept coming to a tie. To break the tie, they simply held it in abeyance for a certain amount of time to come back and readdress it later. But as it stands right now, we don't see ties that often. In fact, the first time I've ever seen a tie was the other week. Or excuse me, the first time I saw a tie was when Commissioner Thatcher broke the vote. And then the second one was last week when we had the 3 ties in a row. But that's why I do think it would be important to have that tie-breaking vote in there. And I definitely think with a smaller commission, you're going to get it more often than we do now.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to puzzle out again. So let's play the game of if 3 members are available for council instead of the 5, they still have quorum, but they don't have a presiding officer, like the mayor or the deputy mayor aren't there, would they be able to hold the meeting, or would that be something they create in their rules per ordinance?
Chairman Brendel, I think that they would have to delineate who the next person in command is through their rules and order of business of the Council of Commissioners. So such as right now, Chief Executive Gallagher is not there, it goes to Commissioner Morgan. If Commissioner Morgan is not there, it goes to Commissioner Thatcher. Beyond that, I do not know who it would go to, but I definitely believe that if we have a 4-person commission get put in place, that they would have to, in their own rules and orders, delineate that out so that they can say 3 is our minimum, that constitutes a quorum based off of statutes and rules so long as we're in compliance with state law, and that the 3rd person in line, whoever that may be, is, you have those 3 people, and then you have your tie-breaking vote, whoever that may be, however you guys want to decide that. But yes, that stuff becomes, in my opinion, significantly more complicated with less people, which again goes back to Commissioner Cindy Perdue-Dolan's comment that if these are going to be full-time commissioners, I definitely see them should be there a lot more, particularly on nights with important votes.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also point out that for this discussion with regard to the number and the tie-breaking, I think this has been a great conversation for folks to learn, but I would suggest on the messaging to not say 4 members of the council, because there are going to be 5 members of the council, and that includes the mayor who is now going to be in the legislative branch. To Cindy Shaw's point about currently it's more in the executive branch and then the tie-breaking vote in the Council of Commissioners. So to let people know, because I think you go from 12 to 4 instead of like 12 to 5, that's a big difference in districts, citywide, vote for a mayor, to kind of to let folks know and be educated with what that representation looks like. So I think we need to say 5 members of the council, which includes the mayor, if we were to go down that road. It just gives more context and clarification.
Okay, so we have some feedback regarding adding a tie-breaking vote. We have some feedback regarding changing the composition statement, that there's a council of commissioners of the city county composed of 5 members, 2 or 3 of whom shall be elected every 2 years, and then including 1 mayor who is elected at large. Perhaps that would be the change there. The other question that was put forward to this group in regards to something that was highlighted yellow was back to, I guess that's city manager. That's not the next section, so we can move on to that in a minute here. Mr. Enruth.
Chairwoman Brandel, I just have a question that I would like to pose to the commission, just simply because I've been, working within this government for the past year, with knocking it down to 4 full-time commissioners plus a mayor for a council, a total of 5. If anybody has thought about what their actual workload looks like, do we have the workload to have full-time commissioners, or is it more probable to have part-time commissioners? That's just something that I thought of when looking at this and looking at everything we do with regards to the Council of Commissioners on a weekly basis. I'm not going to say that the workload is light with the council, because when you look at the agenda, sometimes it's very long. But a lot of times, I do believe that it's less than 40 hours a week worth of work to be able to go through your agenda, what you're figuring out, what you're working on, and who to talk to. So that was just a question I had: is there enough work for 4 full-time commissioners?
Excellent question.
And a mayor.
And a mayor. Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, thank you. With that, Matt, excuse me, would it be feasible to make them like 3/4 time? What do you think about that, or do you need them to be full-time? And then there's always the option to move them into full-time.
Chairman Randall, Commissioner Thielen, I was looking at the compensation chart. We're comparable in Butte-Silver County to a couple of other counties or cities. Where if you look at like the city of Helena, they have 4 council members and a mayor elected at large. They're $11,000 a year. That appears to me that they're not full-time council members. Again, with regards to, and then if you go on the back, you go to Park County, and they have 3 full-time commissioners elected at large, and those appear to be full-time positions for a county with half the population of ours. So that's just where my question derived from, is what their actual workload is, and is there a workload that is large enough to have 4 full-time council members plus a mayor, which is technically 5 members, at what would arguably be a decent salary of around the $60,000 to $70,000 a year mark. Specifically, when we start looking at that would cost the city of Butte-Silver County a minimum of probably $1 million as it sits right now per person, when we're looking at a salary plus a benefits package plus where you're going to put them plus everything. So that's just where I started contemplating and thinking myself, I don't know if we want to discuss with Helena how their council members work and what their workload looks like, which could be more equivalent to Butte-Silver counties. And it was just a question I wanted to pose to the council themselves: is do we have enough information to say 4 full-time council members rather than 4 either part-time or currently, the same amount of time that they're spending now?
Ms. Dolan, and then I'll take you, Mr. Thielen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To answer your question, Matt, I would answer it and in tandem have you all look at section 3.10, interference with administration. Under the section 3.10 06th mayor. First, I'd like to say that absolutely there is a huge workload that could be taken on by a full-time commissioner. As a former part-time commissioner on the council, I'd have to say I did not have enough time, because I worked a full-time job, to engage with the department heads, to engage with all of the unelected bureaucrats who do the legwork to get to a council meeting. And a lot of times the 12 that are currently elected and sit here play catch up a lot before a Wednesday night meeting. They are trying to chew on all of this information to make an educated vote, especially monetarily. So I would argue there is more than enough work, from Superfund to community enrichment to all of these things. Absolutely, if someone is wanting to do a good job, that's the case. And I would ask the working group, with regard to the section 3.10, it talks about, and I think it's related to what's currently happens, not to have the Council of Commissioners, those 12 folks, interfere with the work of the bureaucracy, if you will. However, I would love the charter to say council members should be allowed to gather information from those department heads. Having a brick wall and not allowing the Council of Commissioners, who make those monetary decisions in the legislative branch for Butte-Silver Bow, not to engage with the department heads on what they're doing, just informationally to find out what's happening. If there's that brick wall, there's not that flow of communication, and things could be misinterpreted, and I understand that there needs to be that separation, not to give orders or not to hire and fire or not to determine what that job is of a department head. They've got that autonomy, but I would hope that whatever council looks like in 2028 has some ability to discuss and to learn about different departments in Butte-Silver Bow.
Ms. Dolan, to your question, does the introductory phrase, except for the purposes of inquiries and investigations, does that address your concern in that section?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, yes, but I would like if we could be firmer in that, change that up a little bit to say, inquiries, investigations. I think a lot of times people think investigations, that's more formal, but just for information gathering, to maybe extrapolate that out or just define that a little better for general folks.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, thank you, Cindy. I think what we were thinking of is, since the executive branch has now have a city-county manager, those inquiries from the Council of Commissioners to the legislative branch, and since the legislative branch has the authority to hire and fire that city-county manager, those inquiries can be given to that person, he or she, with the specific questions regarding public servants and department heads, and ask the city county manager to report back to the council regarding that specific question. That's why we have changed it, or that's why we have put it in there, that says for the purposes of inquiries and investigation, they can ask whatever they want. But for the administration of the executive branch, that is a city county manager's job. And since that job is tied directly to the legislative branch of the Council of Commissioners, those inquiries should be given to the city county manager and not individual specific workers of Butte-Silver Bow.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, excuse me, Dan. So if Mr. Enruth thinks that there might not be enough for 4, and if we're going to have a mayor and a deputy mayor, could you not have 3 and have those 2 if you have a tiebreaker that way?
Madam Chair, thank you, Ben. I think what that is more of a rules sort of narrative that the Council of Commissioners will have to do. The deputy mayor, remember, is going to be appointed after the general election by the member of the Council of Commissioners. Did I get that right? And so that will be, that deputy mayor will sit instead of the mayor if that mayor is absent or not in town, and that deputy mayor from the Council of Commissioners shall sit as the presiding officer. Remember, these are just recommendations. You guys can come back and say, we want 3 Council of Commissioners. You can come back and say, we want 1 mayor, part-time, but through districts. You guys can come back and say, you guys, I sound like a Butte guy. You folks can come back and say that you want a non-paid Council of Commissioners 5. We threw this out there because we needed something to stick on the wall and have the deliberation process. So we're more than happy to look at the provisions and changes that this commission wants. We needed to start somewhere. We knew that we were, it's an arbitrary number. We thought 5 was good because it's an odd number. The mayor is going to be elected at large through most of the community, 4 districts. And obviously, with some of the discussion tonight, the mayor can just be the person who breaks ties and ceremonial and writes or signs documents and resolutions and deeds and everything else that has to come up with the paperwork that a mayor does. So we are more than happy to take on any sort of changes that we might have. Again, it's a placeholder, and that's what we talked about in our work group.
Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with what Dan said. It's a placeholder, but we also have to remember what we heard from the public in our surveys. And a lot of the comments were about having full-time commissioners. There were folks that didn't think they were available, or they couldn't get the answers because they're trying to get the answers after 5 o'clock. And so I think we can't lose sight of that. Dan's right. We certainly, we could go to 3, we could go to 5. Those numbers are, it is a placeholder, but we also can't lose sight of what we have heard from our sessions.
Thank you, Lori. I was going to say that.
Mr. Steppen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 questions, if I can. One, and it's, to me, I think, at least from my perspective, this is really solid, and we're talking about nuances that come up no matter whether you have 4 or 6 or 3, succession plans and tiebreakers. I think you're going to exist in some capacity, no matter what number you have. So my first question is to the working group. What would be lost? What do you lose by saying? And I think it comes down to the quorum. To me is important, because that, I think, answers half the question. But what do you think you lose by saying a quorum of 4? The mayor is the tiebreak, is not as a non-voting member, but as the tie-breaking member. What do you lose by not having the mayor vote on all issues? Because I think it'll only happen when the mayor's vote is actually valid, if that makes sense.
Madam Chair, Matt, that's exactly right. Since we moved the mayor to a citywide position, is voted on by all the people of this community, we thought that because of that, because we don't have a chief executive anymore, that mayor will be a legislative branch employee, part of the legislative branch, and that at-large election should mean something. So it should mean that the mayor can vote on every issue that comes up before the council. That's how we thought about it, and not just be a tiebreaker in terms of ties. Now, there probably will be ties, But I don't, as you said, there's little nuances that can happen, whether it's, like you said, 3, 5, 7, whatever the number may be. So we thought, and Lori, correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but we thought since it is a community-wide election of the mayor, that mayor should have the ability to have the vote in any legislative matter that comes before the legislature.
Mr. Steppen?
Thank you. My second question, and this question, if I can, would be to the county attorney to make sure I'm understanding correctly. This is a form of government question, and the form of government questions are required to be framed in, would you like things done this way, a new way, or the way they are, right? And what I'm getting at is there an opportunity from the full-time, part-time to have two form of government questions under this issue, where the first question is the number of commissioners, another separate question might be full-time, part-time, and if so, do we run the risk of a potential vote saying voting down for commissioners, but yes, we want full-time, and do we then end up with 12 full-time commissioners?
Chairwoman Brandel, Commissioner Steppen. So this is the difficulty in the three question rule. In my opinion, this council has to come up with do you want you don't get to split it up. You don't get to say, do you want 4 commissioners or keep the 12? Do you want them full-time or part-time in this? What happens there is that chews your questions up. You have to come up with a definitive, in my opinion, and this is Sean Peterson and I have looked at this falls in line with the MACO stuff that we found, that the question has to be combined as one. Do you want 4 full-time county commissioners to be on X rotating years of election, to the 2-4 rotation? It has to be a single question. Otherwise, yes, I think you either chew up your questions, and that is also true. I do believe you could end up with them saying that the public could theoretically say half of them, want them full-time or part-time, and they vote the question down because they don't like a certain part of it. And so that's where this commission has to come to a consensus of what is more important. Do we give the voters of Butte the opportunity to say 4 full-time or 4 commissioners as one question, full-time or part-time as a second question, and chew up 2 of the questions that you get to use? So that way you technically could get the 4, but then they get to vote full-time or half-time. But then that's the next thing is like you said, if they vote it down, you remain with your 12. That's where they stay. So based off of that stuff that came out of Ravalli County, I think that this commission has to come to the consensus of, if you're changing it, 4 full-time or part-time commissioners, this is their time, this is how often they're elected as a single question, in order to be able to have your 3 full questions.
Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. County Attorney, could you explain, I felt like I read something from our MSU that you could have a question and then sub-questions underneath? Am I mistaken?
Chairwoman Brandel and Commissioner Casey, I don't know the answer to your question. I would have to look at the MSU package to see if that delineates from what I've been looking at with what we've found with regards to that 3-question rule.
Ms. Casey?
Madam Chair, maybe I can find it and send it to you.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Steppen. I had similar questions. I'm still trying to figure out the order of operations, if you will. And Ms. Dillon, I'll take your question next. I have one myself, though, for the working group. I noticed on our compensation pieces, there seems to be a difference between city commissioners and county commissioners. Our county commissioners are much higher paid, and our city commissioners are much less paid. Did you get an answer to why that is?
Madam Chair, the county commissioners are full-time commissioners in all counties, so they are full-time employees that have a salary. In the city governments, they're part-time, and paid part-time wages. But the city manager is full-time and are paid very well
Okay.
in the city government. So the county government does pay 3 county commissioners full-time, and they go to their office, and they're in charge of whatever they be assigned for by the chair of the council, so county commissioners, so.
So if I were to capture this correctly, those county commissioners are doing all of the work of running the county, the legislative side of their county, including what maybe a county manager might do for them in the case of we have a city manager for our city commission districts. So it's about the amount of workload and the people that are doing that load.
I believe so, Madam Chair.
Okay. Ms. Dolan, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is a little bit off the content that we're talking about right now, but under 3.06 Mayor, Powers and Duties, it says the mayor shall be recognized as the head of the city-county government for all ceremonial purposes and by the governor for purposes of military law and shall execute contracts, deeds, and other documents. I want to just put your attention to and shall execute contracts, deeds, and other documents, but the next sentence says the mayor shall have no administrative duties. That kind of sounds like administrative duty with contracts, deeds, and other documents. Can you all explain what that means, if I'm just reading it incorrectly? Thanks.
Madam Chair, Cindy, that is just boilerplate language that we received from several cities who have mayors. That's exactly what they have said in state law.
Mr. Enruth?
Chairman Brando, Commissioner Dolan, I believe that the differentiation there is administrative duties, meaning day-to-day duties, but also the only person that can bind a county or a city has to be the elected official. So while that, I would agree with you, seems to be like an administrative task, it's one that's done after commission, and so they are the signer of it, but they're not in the sense of doing what our current chief executive is doing now, where he's part of the underlying administrative things that happen to get that contract to council. He's just simply signing off on it and binding the city county to it rather than the actual administrative part of getting it to council, if that makes sense. But I do agree with you, the semantics of the language make it kind of confusing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, County Attorney. That's a good explanation. So maybe we need to add a little bit of context to that language in powers and duties, and maybe add that day-to-day administrative duties. So that's a little bit clearer just for folks reading the charter and figuring out what that means. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Mr. Enruth?
Chairman Brandel and Commissioner Sunny Dolan, there's actually a really easy way to do that. We do it in the law all the time. The mayor shall have no administrative duties except for expressly stated within the charter or above. So those are his administrative duties as stated above, and so you just finish that sentence out. He shall have no administrative duties unless expressly otherwise provided for by charter.
Okay, moving forward with this particular piece on the number of commissioners, I would take public comment if there are public comments on the number of commissioners. And Mr. Banderab, if we can keep questions short and to the point, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I must commend you on going away from precedent and setting something worthwhile for the people. The number of commissioners. I think you have to start with what is the workload of those commissioners. You blew by the comment over here. If you read your first public indicated in your survey that they want a system that will require commissioners to actively listen and hear constituents by holding regular neighborhood listening sessions with actual interactive, consensual drawing discussions, making decisions. That, to me, is the most important part of determining the number of commissioners. If all you're talking about is policy-making commissioners, you're right, we only need part-time. But if you're going to put in there, and that's what's not in there now, what are the additional responsibilities of the commissioners? Are they supposed to be neighborhood community improvement coordinators? So I go back to the next question. Your mayor is actually a CEO. He's going to be the council representative that is the CEO of the manager. So I don't really think he needs to have additional vote on the commission. The way it's set up now, that person would, or as you're recommending, that person would have the CEO authority and would be able to break those tie votes as needed. And he would be representing the entire community because he has that power. Now, for number of commissioners, I go to 5. Because I want those commissioners doing what the people ask them to do. Out there listening to their constituents, helping their constituents improve their neighborhoods, not just sitting up here making policy. And that was the point that was brought up. They don't have time to do it unless they're full-time, because that's a big job. They need to be helping people write grant requests. They need to be working through the manager to the different departments to get things done for their communities and their neighborhoods. So that's the first thing you have to decide. What additional responsibilities are you going to give those commissioners to justify an additional number? I go 5 plus 1 mayor. I hate the term mayor, but he's really functioning as a CEO, etc. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity.
Mr. Leibel, do you have any comments? Okay, thank you. There are only public members tonight, so I appreciate you giving some comment. All right, so in this section, I think we still have some fine tooth combs to run through that particular section. However, I would entertain a vote to move this to our preliminary report with the intent that once we have it combed through and we've got the language down, then we would take a vote, that this would be something we want to, in preliminary measures, move forward towards a ballot once we have the final language. Of course, that's going to come through process. Is it clear what I'm asking? I apologize. I feel like I'm talking in a circle. Yeah. Okay, so I think we need to clarify some language in sections that was raised in terms of, we have a number of commissioners that, I think we'd probably need to describe or have a consensus on the number of commissioners. We have the question of the tie-breaking vote, if we want to eliminate the mayor's ability to vote on every issue and restrict it only to tie-breaking. So those are 2 clarifications that we have in this section. Were there others? I think that was the majority of it, other than full-time and part-time was the third question that we had. We wanted to consider how much effort there is that we think these four full-time commissioners and one full-time mayor would have. Do we have enough to make it full-time, or would we want it to be part-time? So there's still some deliberation that we need to make. What I'm asking is, do we want to move this to our preliminary report, given that we still have deliberation, or we want to deliberate and then move to the preliminary report might be the better order of operations? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What great discussions, I think, on this subject. And having been a commissioner myself for a while, I always had an issue with a tiebreaker being on the other side of the fence, I'll just say. But I think, with a few things, and a lot of this is just perfect, just a couple little things that had come up. And so I would make a motion to approve what we have before us, with the caveat that we will be tweaking a few things and coming back probably to this body to make that final, but move it toward the preliminary report.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Let's have our discussion on this, because there is the opportunity for us to make those changes tonight, but we are deliberative, so I want to make sure that we have time to do those deliberations and think about the issues that were raised tonight. But I'm willing to, put this motion aside and work through each of the issues as they were. So open to that discussion. Mr. Dennehy.
Madam Chair, I think what we can do is maybe from our discussion, deliberation tonight, come up with a sheet of what those issues are so that we have it in front of us, so the next time we meet, we will be ready to vote on which way this commission wants to move. Shanna is excellent in taking minutes, and she's probably much better in what we have talked about, and I think that the ballot, if lack of a better word, the discussion items, maybe that's a better word, that we've talked about tonight can be placed in front of us, and we can make those determinations next time we meet to make sure that the preliminary draft that is voted on now is in the preliminary draft study. Because if we continue to not make these decisions, they're hard. And I didn't think that we were going to make a decision tonight, because we just folded, or just gave it to you today in a presentation. But if we think about it, and if we have some things on papers of what we discussed about, people can think about what they really want to do. And then we have deliberative process. Say, okay, I agree that we should have 4 members of the council, 1 mayor at large, and they should be part-time. That could be one of the recommendations, and we vote on it. Have that discussion, and say, I don't really agree on that, and I don't either, or I don't, and we'll kind of break down what our decisions are going to be after thoughtful deliberations and comments and listening to our colleagues as they make their presentations. So I would suggest that we have those list of things that we talked about in front of us so we can make an informed decision.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dan. I think that's a good idea, but I wanted to ask you a question with regard to that. If we hold this in abeyance, so you're asking to hold the votes in abeyance tonight, wait until we get a slate of information that we've discussed tonight. My question to you is, I personally would like to vote on each item, not in just one thing. Like, we're going to do all this and take one vote. I'd like to take a vote on number of commissioners, mayor, tiebreak. I mean, all these different things, and then we can coalesce around what the yays and nays say. Is that something you're nodding your head? So I'm hoping that's an agreement. Thanks.
Madam Chair, thank you, Cindy. That's exactly what I mean. To break, not in a whole gamut of one vote, and that's what we're bringing in, but sections of votes. We'll vote on paid, non-paid, part-time, full-time, 12, 3, 6, 9. Those sorts of questions, and then see where it goes.
So, Madam Chair, thank you, Dan. Maybe to make a substitute motion to go more towards what you're doing, what your sense of that is, if Cindy's applicable to that.
Sure.
Or amenable to that. Excuse me, wrong word. Thanks.
Madam Chair, I have no
Mr. County Attorney has a
Point of order.
point of order.
Ms. Shaw can simply withdraw her motion.
Okay. And we had a motion and a second, and now I believe that after hearing what Dan said, I think I kind of meant that at the time. I said we can come back, but it's clarified much better the way Dan mentioned that we take it in pieces and vote. So that would be my new motion, and I want to make a comment. So do we have a second?
I think we're asking to withdraw the original motion, and then
gotcha.
we'll make a new motion.
Substitute. Got it. I withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
You need to withdraw your second.
Ms. Casey.
Madam Chair, do we need a vote? This was on the agenda as a discussion item, so I'm not sure that we would need a vote on this.
Thank you. I appreciate helping us to organize ourselves with the meeting tonight. We probably don't need a vote on this. I really want us to get moving. Like, I want us to have the deliberations, but I think that, it might be that we need to break these down one by one. And so when we're doing the voting, it's issue by issue, and that's the only thing on that agenda for the night instead of reports from each group. Ms. Casey.
Madam Chair, I would agree, and I agree with what Dan said. When we put forth this tonight, we didn't expect that we would be voting on it. This is a lot of information for everyone. For some, it may be the first time that you've seen it, so take the time. And then my recommendation would be that it's on the agenda at our next meeting to vote on each item as
Listed out by Mr. Dennehy, each issue. Okay, I appreciate this. I appreciate you guys bringing me back around as well with organizational structure here, with 2 meetings a month. That's feeling a little urgent. Mr. Steppen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only comment, feeling your urgency as well, is to remind us that this is to go into a preliminary report that will go to the public, and we're going to hear from the public where we're not moving in the right direction, hopefully, and through a round of listening sessions and public comment. We're not etching anything in stone, even by putting it in the preliminary report. So.
Thank you, Mr. Steppen. Mr. Dennehy, and then I'll take you, Ms. Shaw.
Madam Chair, I would just like to thank Matt for stepping in at our meeting, putting his head in for a minute, and then ended up staying for an hour and a half to try to figure out the language. So I appreciate it. Thanks, County Attorney.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a comment, and I think it would really be neat if we could end up with a unanimous vote on these things and just show the community that we mean it, that we all are on the same page, and that we can reach a consensus. Just a comment.
Okay, so hearing that, we're just going to move forward out of City County Manager Working Group Update and Number of Commissioners Working Group Update. And we added the Neighborhood Council Working Group Update in that presentation as well. So we've clicked off 3 out of the 5 updates. Are we good with that? Are we okay, Ms. Shaw?
I don't think I have the page that was on. My little packet just ends with the city manager. You just have one little blurb, I think it was, on an addition or whatever it was for the neighborhood councils. Is it in the duties page? Oh, okay, never mind. Thank you. Thanks, Chad.
Okay, so then just to make sure I'm tracking and we have this correct between Shanna and I, the next meeting on the 29th, we will take on bullets 1 and 2, city, county manager, and number of commissioners, voting issue by issue, correct? Okay, thank you for the good of the order there. I appreciate you keeping me organized. All right, so with the fire department's working group update, Ms. Casey.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but could we also, on our list, under the city manager, can we add that subsection B of section 4.01 of how we want to determine if the city manager needs to be removed, of what method? So could we add that for our voting next time?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. One of those thoughts in my head that's not expressed, so I appreciate you. Are we ready to move forward for the fire update? So who's taking that one? Mr. Steppen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members of the working group, please jump in, and I'll make our update brief because we continue to do great work and have great conversations. We recently had lunch with Jeff Miller, former Director of Fire Services and Chief of Butte-Silver Bow Fire Department. Had an opportunity to speak with Jeff on his experiences, which I think were a very fruitful conversation. We have additional conversations upcoming. I did hear from Chief Executive Everett in Anaconda, and it does not look like he's going to have the opportunity to come and meet with us as a commission before we have to get a preliminary report done, but has offered our group to schedule a time to come out and have a conversation with him, which we intend to do, and probably should within this week or early next. And we have a meeting that we have to schedule with a number of the volunteer chiefs that have expressed a desire to meet with our working group as well, so that we can take this input into recommendations on how we can help clear up some of the ambiguity that exists in language, which I think the group has identified as really what our responsibility is here going forward.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Matt. That was a good summation of what we're trying to do. And I think the working group aspect of this has been excellent because it allows for candid conversations, for tough back and forth, but knowing that we're trying to do what's best for Butte-Silver Bow in the fire space. So along with that, I just FYI to folks listening tonight, I know Mr. Silk has been great in reaching out to individual commission members and having that kind of conversation, which is great. I did talk to one of the volunteer chiefs this afternoon, and he is all on board for coming to the working group and giving their input, if any further questions that we have as the working group. And then finally, I wanted to ask this question tonight because it's been really great. Chief Osborne has been great to give us information, like the buildings and the equipment. But I want to ask tonight if it's possible to get because a lot of the decisions that we're going to make are going to be monetary. And so those are things that the council of commissioners are going to have to deal with. For any kind of framework we set up, it will have monetary consequences. So I wanted to see if we could get, and I'm going to look at Chad, since Chief Osborne has been chief, to find out, because he's likely going to be in charge when any recommendations or changes are made in the charter moving forward. So with the fire budget, to look on every single year, the past, like, say, 4 years, to see what the budget is for a fire department and where those monies have gone, because a big question that we have is about budgets and money available to volunteers, et cetera. So if we could get a printout of the the fire services, Butte-Silver Bow, what that whole budget looks like, and then each year how that has been disseminated to paid, and then how much money has gone to each of the volunteer departments, if you will, each like racetrack, Terra Verde, you know, all of them, all 9, and what that looks like. That would be very helpful for us to see that. So that's what I'm asking tonight. But beyond that, I think we're doing well, and we're kind of rushed, but we all are, but we want to try and get as much information so we can bring back some good suggestions for the charter.
Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I will definitely ask. The Director of Fire Services watches all these meetings too, so he'll be able to give some insight on that. And I guess my question to the group is, we say all the time that we're not worried about monetary situations. What are we looking for with that kind of information? Just to be more well-rounded with decision-making process and how that decision-making process is going to affect the charter? The intents and purposes behind seeking that information that's all public. Anyone can get it whenever they want. Just so I can give some direction, or if he listens to this, like the main reason to provide more context in the documents that you would like him to give you guys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chad, for that question. I think it would provide us some additional context with regard to the umbrella question that we've been listening to since January is a question of working together, transparency, and what that looks like. And we need to have some sort of historical basis for that and what the past 4 or 5 years have looked like with regard to money that's given from the Butte-Silver Bow taxpayer, and we're talking about all kinds of ideas. But if we're going to keep, as a scenario, one scenario is to keep the budget with the Butte-Silver Bow paid department as the lead, and then they get to decide and determine what the volunteer looks like, the departments look like volunteer-wise, but we need to have some sort of frame of reference as to what does it look like currently? What's the status quo? What does it look like for paid working volunteers and the distribution of funds? And I think that's a good place to start, and the discussion moving forward.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chad. You've been giving us a lot of good information. And on Cindy Perdue Dolan's, the other Cindy with a Y, your comments about we talked about this earlier, the monetary, it does come down to, like power and money in a lot of ways. But I also want to say that Matt Steppen put together a really great proposed agenda for us, and I keep going back to it. And there is an objective that we identify what the study commission can realistically do to address issues. And I'm not sure, this might be off track on what Cindy was saying, but we have no way to solve interpersonal conflicts or day-to-day management problems or training disagreements, that kind of thing. And I just don't know if this would just be kind of like that, or maybe I'm not understanding very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Cindy, yeah, that has nothing to do with anything. What it boils down to is trying to figure out how much money the paid are using, and this is Butte-Silver Bow tax money, and how much is being put towards volunteer departments, not personalities, not issues, not anything like that. And we don't make monetary decisions, but the decisions we do make on the framework and wanting to move ahead with who gets to decide where the money goes. Well, where is the money going currently? We don't know that, and trying to find that in Butte-Silver Bow budget books like this is really hard. So if we can just get a printout from the chief that says, you know, let's just, easy numbers. The fire department got $10 for the year, and $2 went to the volunteers, and it was disseminated this way or distributed this way, and we still have this much money. But we have to figure out where we're starting from. And it's easy if the chief who heads up the fire department can tell us that, and then we have a place to start and to move forward with framework.
Mr. Steppen?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and maybe I can help here. But I think, and tell me if I'm not articulating your ask correctly here, but I'm going to give an example in our conversation with Chief Miller. At one point, there was a set amount per volunteer station under Director Miller. That changed under Director Miller to pooling them and going project by project. And to me, what I think we're getting at is what's the process now, just so that we can better understand that process. Is that accurate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt, yes, exactly. So in our discussion with former Chief Miller, he did go into some detail a little bit about trying to give $1,000 to a department, or but again, he didn't want to second guess Chief Osborne at all. He was just saying this is what happened, and that kind of nice back and forth to get information and to educate us about that process. So it really is very simple, just to see what's the process now. You get X number of dollars as a department. How are you distributing those funds, and what does that look like? Paid departments, because you have a couple of those, and then you have all the volunteers. So yeah, just what does that look like? And if he can give us a one-page on, or a couple pages of the past 4 years have looked like this, because we understand that every year is financially different, because right now you're worried about the cap and all of that, but maybe 4 years ago that wasn't the case. So we just wanted to get a sense of what does that look like.
Mr. Enruth?
Chairwoman Brandel, Commissioner Dolan, I do think you need to expand your question, just because of my inner workings of how the budgets work between the volunteers and the paid, and Director Osborne's, how his budget works. The volunteer fire departments do get their own funding too, through fundraising and through grants and stuff like that. And that's like where's this weird disconnect is between the two, is how they're actually being funded and where the money comes from, which is different between each individual volunteer department. Commissioner Silk, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that question needs to involve all of that, correct? How much they've raised also compared to what they've asked Director Osborne for. Would that be correct?
Mr. Silk?
Madam Chair, thank you. County Attorney Enruth. Yes, so there's, by ordinance, the volunteer chiefs are supposed to submit a budget to the Director of Fire Services for items that need to be, fixed throughout the year. And it's all public knowledge, so we can get anything that we want. What I fear is that there's a witch hunt of wondering how much money is going to go to this department compared to another department, when there's not a true context of actually understanding how a fire department should be run. So I would be more than happy to try to and work with the Director of Fire Services to get the information that you guys want, for sure. I'd be happy to do that. But I would just ask that when you do get it, that if you have any questions, that you ask the Director of Fire Services on why this happened or why that happened, because no one's contacted him yet. No one's contacted him and sat in his office to go ahead and go through a budget, right? So I believe that if you get that information, please sit down with the Director of Fire Services so he can explain his budget. That will it'll give you more context, I believe, on how things are spent.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, thank you. Sorry, my voice is getting worse as we go, but so I have a question, and excuse me, because I don't know if these volunteers put in for a grant, does that money go directly to them, go into the general fund? Does it go into the fire fund? Where does that money go?
Mr. Enruth?
And I think Commissioner Silk can answer this too, but that was more what I was suggesting was the volunteers do get that type of money, and the way that it goes back and forth right now is weird. So that's why I suggested just simply expanding the question not only to Director Osborne, but also to the volunteer chiefs about what they have got and put back into the program, because that will actually give you a true number of what each individual volunteer fire department's budget is. They do different types of wildland firefighting in the summer, and some of them get money for that, some of them don't. So my suggestion just simply was while the question needs to be presented to Director Osborne on how the volunteers have requested budgetary money from him, I think the volunteers also need to be able to show what money they've gotten from the community and then put back into it too. It was a double-sided question, and I didn't think that this commission understood that. I didn't understand it until I had to look at it for legal reasons within the county. But yeah, they get money from multiple different places that a lot of time doesn't come back into the current county budget. So I just would say expand the question to all the chiefs and Director Osborne.
With that, I think there's a need for a little bit of direction. I'm going to give that from the chair, and the working group can certainly push back. But I want you to be careful of timeline, authority, and also the scope of our work here. And so I think a good high quality conversation with Chief Osborne is in order, and then you're already having those communications with the volunteer chiefs. So maybe just asking that follow-up question that Mr. Enruth is looking for would be helpful. And I understand the intention is to see what the baseline is right now, how decisions are being made, but can the charter help you make better decisions would be the direction I would take that in. Ask the question of what can the charter do in regards to this fiduciary responsibility, or is there anything that the charter can do in fiduciary responsibility related to fire services, just to give you breathing room and time to do your work. I think if we're getting too far down the auditing hole or looking at the issues of being tit for tat, this group does this and that group does that, and we're trying to manage their budgets for them, we're not in the right order. I can tell I frustrated you, Ms. Dolan, with that comment, but it's not intended to be that we're starting that conversation again. But I want us to be careful with the deliberations and want to be careful with the procedures as we go forward, as well as making sure that we have time to get our work done in regards to what the charter can and cannot do and how we can provide that structure that we've been talking about. Ms.
Thank you,
Dolan?
Madam Chair. Yeah, I totally agree with that because, we are in a time crunch and we want to get the best information for this preliminary report. But I don't want to go down the road of witch hunts. This is anything but. And so I kind of took that, I don't like that language, and you're free to say it, obviously, but this isn't that. This is gathering information that is vitally important, and I appreciate the county attorney. I hadn't gotten there yet, so he kind of jumped the gun on me, but you're absolutely right. We need to ask this same question to the volunteers to say in the past, and this goes right to the framework. If we're setting, and I always go to Chad's comment because I love it so much, setting us up for success and the framework that we have in the charter, we absolutely need to have that conversation and to look at where's all the money going. We don't have a fiduciary duty. We send that to the council. But in order to do the framework of who's going to control it, who's going to be the head of these things, and I really appreciated the Mr. Leibel's letter to start off our meeting, and when he said, some of the things that have been in the charter for 20 years haven't been, I think this was a great comment about the training position, and it's been vacant for 20 years. This goes to our mission. Are we going to spend 2 years working on a new charter and not have it be followed? That's one of my biggest frustrations and fears right now. But I think the volunteers with fire, I think knowing what the fire budget looks like from the perspective of the paid and the volunteers both, to give us that information so we have a springboard to figure out what does that framework look like. I do not think it's a witch hunt. I don't think it's targeting one person or one chief. I think this is a very, as we've been told time and again, this has been kicked down the road a million times, and we are the first group that's actually going to work on it. So I think it's not a witch hunt. It is a gathering of information, and how we disseminate it as a working group is vitally important, but those conversations and that information is vital.
Ms. Dillon, I appreciate your comments, and I don't, from my perspective, I don't feel like I'm making a comment about witch hunts. I'm trying to direct the group. And I agree that that's something that maybe you guys can visit about. I don't think it's intended to be a witch hunt. It doesn't seem like that from your group. And we will trust that your process is above board and you're acting with integrity, and I believe that to the very bottom of my soul. So, however, I want us to remain in our boundaries, making sure that we're getting good information and that you're not spinning your wheels. That's my direction, is making sure that you are targeting those questions and being purposeful, because it is a very big task. I have sat with the chief to learn about his budget before. I've sat with Director Hassler and ran through the budgets with her as well, and it is a long and time-consuming process. And so I'm just giving you some caution. And I appreciate the work, by the way, with this group, because you have taken on the biggest, probably the most intensive process for our study commission in terms of learning and understanding. With that, is there any other comments, Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question. It's not regarding the budgets, but as you're looking at Anaconda Deer Lodge, and I know we want to look at them because they are another consolidated city-county form of government, but is it also important to determine whether they operate as a first-class city by state law or a second class? Because based on the information Mary had provided to us when she was doing the commissioners, their population is 9,900. So that would classify them as a second-class city. My understanding is they could have, maybe by resolution or some other mechanism, said they were going to operate as a class 1. But my question is, because of fire, as a class 1, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but as a class 1, you have to have a paid department. If you're a class 2, you can operate solely as a volunteer department. And so I just want to make sure that we ask that question and we're clear, so that we are comparing apples to apples, I guess. And I don't know if the county attorney, having worked there before, knows what class they operate. If not, I think that's an important question to ask the chief executive.
Mr. Enrith, do you know?
Commissioner Brandel, Chairwoman Brandel, Commissioner Casey, I can't remember off the top of my head what they are, but I do know why they act the way they do with the split. They do have a paid department. It's just run by ordinance. It's not in their charter. And then they have the volunteer department on the outside of the city that has their own budgetary authority with their trustees. The volunteer department in Anaconda functions just like our volunteer department in Melrose. They receive no budget from, Butte-Silver County. They raise their own funds. They go through their board of trustees. That's the difference between Butte, is that's been like mushed together somehow over the past 40 years. So that is their main difference, and that's how they voted to do it, and they kept it that way. I do know that when I left, Anaconda Deer Lodge County was looking at annexing those two outer lying departments because they were spreading out. I don't know if they've done it yet or not, but that's kind of how the process works. I mean, you have your volunteer departments that are in, technically usually in the outskirts, and then the city continues to annex them in. The thing that Anaconda has going for them, though, is their volunteer departments aren't contained within their charter. They dealt with that. So then by ordinance is how they continue to change it. So that's the difference, is theirs are functioning the way statute requires them to function. Ours are not.
Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my comment about the witch hunt. That wasn't directed at the working group. I guess I just am so frustrated with working in a system that's been broken and the structure's been broken when I know it could be so much better. And some of that frustration, I think, comes out in these meetings because I know that it could be so much better. So I just wanted to say that. And then also with the Anaconda topic, you know, understanding the geographical area that Deer Lodge Anaconda has compared to Butte-Silver Bow, and the reason why rural fire districts work very well in a larger space is, you know, it's not apples to apples, but like the working group is trying to do is to gather information. I understand that, so I just want to leave with that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silk. Anything else on fire group update? It was fiery. I think I'm punny. So anyway, all right, moving on to our coroner working group update. Oh, I thought it was you and Ben. I think it was the 2 of you.
So, Madam Chair, because of my question, you can rightly assume we have not met. But that said, because obviously Ben and I are both on fire as well, and that's taken up a lot of the oxygen. But no pun intended. But with the coroner working group update, we're coming off of some great testimony recently, which I think really educated us quite a bit with regard to the sheriff coroner or just the coroner independent. And I think we have a little bit of work to do because outreach to the folks in Butte-Silver Bow who work with the coroner. And I think that Jason Parrish's testimony was very enlightening, having him at the helm and being autonomous, but we'll get more information back to the group, so apologies for that, but sorry. Long-winded answer where we haven't done anything yet, so thank you.
I will review as well, make sure I have it correct, Cindy, because I'm doubting myself at this point. Any other discussion in here, Ms. Shaw?
Just throw this out, Cindy. I looked at the minutes and it said Matt Steppen and Ben and you were on there. We're all 3 on the fire commission. I'm just looking at the minutes from last meeting.
Perfect, thank you. So are we ready to move to new business group? Oh, yes.
All right, point
Oh.
of order.
Sorry, Ed, before you begin, just a point of order. I did speak with Mr. Daly, Fritz Daly, this afternoon with regard to the Superfund coordinator. I know there were several questions with regard to his input with a letter and documentation about a Superfund coordinator. But in talking with him today, being the questions that were raised 2 weeks ago from this commission to say, well, if it's not under the umbrella of Butte-Silver Bow, what then? Because his request was an independent Superfund coordinator outside of Butte-Silver Bow. He still believes that is imperative for Butte-Silver Bow to get the quality cleanup it deserves. But that said, it doesn't run in tandem with what our jurisdiction is. I mean, we cannot put something in the charter or something in a recommendation that doesn't come under the umbrella of Butte-Silver Bow for all intents and purposes. So that's where that's at, and I just wanted to give you a quick update on that.
Thank you. Mr. Branderab.
You skipped over Neighborhood Council's working group update. You included it in the original presentation, but I do ask for an opportunity to make a comment.
Okay, so Mr. Dennehy, you had it in the original presentation, correct? Okay, Mr. Branderab.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We did have a good conference with the Commissioner Silk. There's 2 things that were not mentioned. In the charter, there is under 3.3E, there is the Council of Commissioners to authorize community councils to advise the Council of Commissioners. I feel it is extremely important that you delete the S and make that a council, because that has caused complications for 20 years. And then in your agenda, you state neighborhood council. I would highly recommend that you add the S, because we need more than one neighborhood council. And remember that they are separate. The council, community council to advise the commissioners, and the neighborhood councils to work on improvement projects within the neighborhood. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, Mr. Vanderab, I just wanted to clarify, the handout that you gave us tonight summarizes what you also just gave in comment. Is that correct? You had it that sub-item neighborhood councils, striking out the S, and then you had said neighborhood community improvement groups should not be called councils. You're looking at neighborhood improvement groups versus, and then there's a council, one council.
There should be, in the current charter, 3.03 E, okay, reads the council of commissioners shall authorize community councils to advise the council of commissioners. And that's confusing. That S needs to be removed from line 3.03E. Okay.
Thank you.
Then you have to add in neighborhood councils, and as they said, by ordinance, what they're going to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That I'm fully in agreement with. But we need more than one neighborhood council. And here again, as I said, I believe those need to be organized from the ground up, not mandated from the top down. But that's beyond the point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderab.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our new business, the working group update of Cindy Shaw and Raylan has no working group update other than we want to take on those 4 different director positions or requests for different director positions. And we started milling through the evaluation document to look at, what is most important. And thinking through that evaluation document based on public comment, it kind of comes down to just the Superfund coordinator. We haven't had much public comment related to changing the parks director, moving them out. We haven't had much comment related to Civic Center. We haven't had much comment related to animal services. So my suspicion is when we come back, we will probably be just bringing a recommendation on the Superfund coordinator based on our public comment. And we'll mail through that, double check that we've got it evaluated correctly and bring it back. And of course, deliberate with all of you. So that's our update there. Ms. Shaw, did you want to add anything to that?
I just recall that I think this came up, and actually is said on the record, that the directors of those departments, like the Animal Services, Civic Center, it was sort of a wish list of theirs, but we didn't really hear much from, citizens. So it's not like it wasn't important, but I believe that that's kind of how I perceived those departments as making their own wish list, I'll call it that. So, yeah, thank you.
And certainly might be part of our recommendations bucket.
Exactly.
Okay, we don't have a public hearing tonight. Other scheduled matters, we don't have those either. Party line is on Wednesday with Cindy and Ben and myself. I will be calling into Party line, just FYI. So I'll be calling in. I have to be in Helena that day. And then we will not meet on December 22nd, but our next weekly study commission meeting will be held December 29th. So since we are adjourning until the 29th, I hope you have a happy holiday, and we'll see you on the 29th. If I could have a motion to adjourn, please. Merry Christmas and adjournment from Mr. Thielen. Is there a second? And a second from Steppen. Thank you, folks.